Hello, my name is Stuart Clook. I'm an artist in residence at Photosynthesis. I'm a photographic artist and printmaker. I use a camera and 19th century printmaking processes to make my prints of New Zealand landscape and flora. In my printmaking, I use a number of processes from the early days of photography. The platinum palladium process, carbon transfer, gum bichromate, and I really enjoy not just the straight printing but also the combinations that I can get from putting gum over platinum or trying unusual substrates and glass and metals from contemporary days. I use mainly film cameras. I enjoy the process of working with a camera in the field, the composition, the exposure, and just working with physical items when I get home. I also digitize, because I need to make my negatives the same size as my prints, so I will digitize my prints and enlarge them with Photoshop and then use digital negatives to make my prints. Some of these processes I use are fully archival. The platinum palladium process, the image is made of pure platinum and pure palladium. They are noble metals, so there is nothing that's going to oxidize them or react with them. So they will be around for generations to come. It's the paper that's going to give way before the actual image itself. And that's part of the attraction as well, making something today that will be here 300, 400, 500 more years possibly down the track. So I do run a number of workshops throughout the year. Carbon transfer printing, platinum palladium and cyatite, and we'll also cover some digital negatives. So I usually run those once every 2 or 3 months. They're based at my studio just near Governor's Bay in Littleton Harbour there. When you came to visit, we were making a carbon print. That takes probably several days to really make that print from beginning to end, particularly with the tissues that we need to make, which is the gelatin and the carbon black, or the calligraphy ink that I'm using. So they would hang in that drying cabinet that you saw for probably 3 or 4 days. They need to be really dry when we come to expose them. So we did that exposure. I just put the tissue in the warm water. So that's going to rehydrate and soak up some water. I put a piece of glass on the top just to weight it down and just to hold it. And then you saw us developing that print in that hot water tray. When the hot water starts to melt off the unhardened gelatin and you start to see an image appearing in the bottom of the tray, yes, that's when the magic really starts to happen. I do sometimes go out with an image in mind. So that carbon process image there was taken at Nappy Beach. Amazing place. When I last visited, I had a square format camera. And although I had a nice image, it really wasn't working with the square. So I thought, I've got to come back with the bigger camera, the 5.4, and just make a wider aspect image of that shot. And I had a shot in mind. There's a tree and some rocks that I just knew would work really, really well. And I'd had it in mind for 3 or 4 months, that particular shot. And whilst I was there, of course, I probably burnt off another half a dozen sheets of film. And sometimes I know where I'm going and what I'm going for. Other times I'll grab the bag and grab some film and turn left at the gate and just see where we go. I really enjoy looking out for the ferns in the forest floor. So sometimes if it's a pretty dull day, it's actually a great day to be with the camera in the forest. So we made a platinum palladium print as well when you came to visit. I guess I enjoy that hands-on, that making stuff. From the powders that I get delivered to then mix them up in my beakers. The process is not hard, they just need to be temperature controlled and time controlled. Then once they've had a few days to brew or mature, I then make up those light sensitive emulsions and either using glass rods or brushes, apply them to my papers to make them light sensitive, which we then use for printing. That was quite interesting because I actually got it wrong, didn't I? I used the negatives that I have for an LED light box that I use for workshops and for traveling, and I'd use that same negative with my sunbed. So the calibrations were not going to be the same, but we thought we'd give it a go. But one of the advantages of the particular platinum process I use is that printing out process is we can inspect the print during exposure. So that's the split frame back that we use, a bit like with a hinge on the back of it. So I think after about 12 minutes we thought we'd have a look, because that would be my normal exposure time. Couldn't really see those details in the highlights, so we're able to put it back into the expose unit to expose a little bit more. And then the cool thing, it's a bit like stand developing film. Those shadow areas are masking, so they all stay pretty well where they are, and it's the highlights that will sort of keep exposing and reacting to build some tone. So the shadows look after themselves, and we'll get a little bit more tone in those highlights. And depending on how much platinum or palladium we put on the emulsion and the humidity in the paper, we can control that contrast and even the hue or the color of the print too. And then through those clearing baths to remove the residual chemistry in the iron, particularly to give it a permanence, make it last. Well, these alternative printing processes are growing. The advent of digital printers or inkjet printers, and the fact that people can now use inkjet or digital negatives has really revolutionized the whole process. I've been working in these processes for probably getting up to nearly 10 years. I'd read something about platinum palladium printing, captured me in terms of the history, the permanence of these processes. But platinum palladium's a little expensive, so I actually started out with calotype, which is a silver nitrate process, very similar to platinum palladium printing. And that was a lot cheaper and allowed me to spend probably far too long working out the process and the digital negatives. And I started to make a couple of good prints, probably several months down the track. It took a while to know which variables to control and those that you just can't control, and you sort of go with the flow in a sense. I used the sun initially, which was part of the problem, because the sun doesn't always shine. But I think once I discovered and found a sunbed on TradeMe, my UV exposures were a lot more consistent and a lot more predictable, and I guess that's where my process started to come together a little bit more. I guess I've been going to Lake Ellesmere and the streams since first arriving in New Zealand nearly 30 years ago. And probably lately in the last 4 or 5 years, it's such a dramatic change in the landscape and in the flora. I don't see the plants or the amount of fish and the animals that I used to see. And I enjoy the space to be so close to Christchurch and yet to be not a sound except the sounds of the birds and the nature itself. It's quite an incredible place. I lose myself when I get there, particularly with my cameras that I use. I just get so engrossed in the scene, trying to think how I might want to print them or what processes I want to use when I get home. Doesn't always work, but that's part of the joy, I guess, and sometimes the frustration in these processes that I use. And sometimes they do surprise me, and they work really well, or they work in an unusual way. You're never quite sure what I'm going to get. So the Ellesmere work that we showed recently here as part of the Janice workshop, I've been working on those prints for probably a couple of years. Through that work, I've probably explored most of the lake's circumference, and there's some amazing places that are a little bit off the beaten track. And I don't think I ever will finish it. It's literally over the hill from me. But every time I go, even to the same places, it's different. I really enjoyed exploring Ellesmere with the pinhole cameras. They're quite liberating. Not having a viewfinder to focus on, or to try and think about depth of field. It is about almost the atmosphere, the space. So you're capturing, I guess, more of the essence of the place with the pinhole camera, and I've really enjoyed that work. I'm really quite excited to be here at Photosynthesis. I'm really keen and looking forward to sharing the processes with you. What I really want to try and do is grow the awareness of the processes that I use, and also the artistic creativity that they can present. I used to shoot digital a lot. I used to make my inkjet prints and use some different substrates, but these processes open up a whole new world. It's physical, hands-on, your feet get tired rather than your fingers. So I'm really keen and quite passionate to be able to share these processes with you. So I'll be running a couple of workshops here at Photosynthesis during the artist residence. So we'll be looking at black and white film development, from complete beginners who know nothing to maybe somebody who's had some experience and wants to try again but doesn't have the equipment at home. And then we'll run a couple of workshops to do some printing. So come and enjoy the magic of the darkroom and see your negatives come to life in those development trays, which I'm really looking forward to. The residency will start with an exhibition of my current work. The subject matter is the New Zealand landscape and flora. I'll show a variety of different techniques and how I've tried to use them with different subject matter. So that will probably run for several weeks at the beginning of the residency. And then during the residency, I'll be really trying to get my head around colour, carbon printing, using colour, using RGB filters, and playing with the idea light is made up of different wavelengths captured at different times, maybe under some control conditions, to then take that out into the field. I'll be here most Fridays, and the plan, if all goes to plan, will be to show some of that work at the end of the residency. Some of the open studio days will be in my studio as well, so certainly during those days, welcome visitors to come and have a look. I am quite nervous because I'll end up with a grey muddy mess, or oh, actually that's quite cool. I'm looking forward to the challenge, and I think just come along for those studio days that I'm here. We'll see what progress I'm making, what problems I have, and maybe how you can help me to work on this process too. So yeah, happy to share my problems.